Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Future in Focus, 5 Event Tech Trends in 2016, presented by Meetings Focus with Kevin Yanoshevsky from CVent and Kurt Aponovich from AV Concepts. My name is Eric Anderson, eMedia Content Developer with Meetings Focus, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to today's webinar. And note that we have several more upcoming webinars yet on a variety of topics that are very important to the meetings industry, so we hope you'll join us for them all. Also, don't forget that Meetings Focus offers a number of e-newsletters, including our popular Meetings in a Minute Planner tips, in addition to our monthly magazine. And also be sure to check us out on the web at meetingsfocus.com. So we'd like to begin today with a brief polling question. A pop-up should appear on your screen momentarily, and that's going to read, please enter the number of people watching this event with you, and please make sure to include yourself. To answer the question, simply select your response and click Submit, and I'll give you a minute to take care of that. All right, thank you for that. Today's webinar is eligible for 1 clock hour of the marketing domain credit toward the CMP. To receive credit for attending this webinar, you must be present for the full hour. Presentation downloads and CMP credit information may be found after you complete the survey at the end of the presentation. Upon completion of the brief survey, you will be taken to the Meetings Focus Webinar Club page to obtain your credit. During the webinar, we encourage you to ask questions. You may submit your questions at any time by typing your question in the Ask a Question box below the speaker photo on the left-hand side of the slide deck and hitting Send. Should you experience any technical difficulties, please send a message in the Q&A area or call 800-553-8878. Lastly, the sound for today's webinar will come through your computer speakers. Make sure they are turned up and take note of the volume adjuster located right below the speaker photo. And just another quick promo, join us next week for a special webinar titled Tricks, Techniques, and Team Building at Unique Venues, presented by John Chen from GeoTeaming on Tuesday, October 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We hope you'll join us for the webinar. Make sure to visit meetingsfocus.com/webinars to register and to check out our on-demand webinars, including the one today once it's added there. And now, I'd like to get to the main attraction. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our speakers, Kevin Yanoshevsky and Kurt Aponovich. Welcome, guys.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, and real quick, the title, I didn't do that. Kevin is Product Marketing Manager with CVent, and Kurt is the Creative Director with AV Concepts. So take it away, guys.
All right. Thank you, Eric. This is Kevin. I'm excited to be back talking to the Meetings Focus audience, and I am especially excited to be joined by Kurt over at AV Concepts. Kurt, go ahead and say hi.
Hey, everyone. How are you doing?
I've got to say, Kurt, I'm especially excited not only to give people a little picture of the future and some of the exciting things that they can pull off next year in their events, but also to highlight some of the amazing stuff you and your team have already done. You guys are really magicians. Not only the stuff that you were able to accomplish at our summer conference, CVent Connect, but also, spoiler alert, some of the things that we are showing today. And I'm a little bit of a science fiction nerd, and one of my favorite authors, Arthur C. Clarke, once said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I think that's especially true today. So let's take a look at the agenda and the things we're going to cover. We're going to talk about some of the most exciting technology trends that we expect to see in 2016 events. Some of this stuff is already happening today. Some of it is on the cutting edge of technology, and some of it you might even call bleeding edge. It's not yet finding mainstream adoption. But to set expectations for everyone on the call, this presentation is going to range from what is possible today to what we hope will be possible in the near future in 5 key areas. And they are, number 1, developing immersive experiences. 2, facilitating attendee interaction. 3, the integration of social media. 4, real-time event management. And 5, finding deep insights. That's a lot of content to cover, and we have so much amazing stuff that couldn't even make it into the presentation. Specifically, there's a number of videos that really help to bring some of these examples to life. So everyone on the call today, make sure that after this presentation, you're going to go to campaigns.cvent.com/2016trends, and that's going to send you through a little feedback survey. Let me know how I did. Let me know how Kurt did. Let us know your thoughts, and we will send you not only your information for your CE credits, but also you're going to get some resources and some more information on some of these great trends. hopefully you'll find something that'll inspire you as you start your 2016 planning. So, Kurt, let's jump right into our first topic, immersive experiences. One of the things I really love about working with the AV Concepts team is your philosophy, not just about developing an event, but really designing an experience for the audience. And although you and I have only worked on corporate events, I think that philosophy comes from all of your experience on the music scene. For example, most people on this call probably don't know that you were the guys behind that amazing Tupac hologram at Coachella this year.
Yeah, and I think, to your point of technology and magicians, there's a lot of technology that goes into something like this, and if you saw this online, it wasn't announced ahead of time because you really wouldn't want to do this type of effect in the middle of the desert at something like Coachella. The elements are against you. Everything's against you. So the fact that something like this happened in that environment was a complete surprise and shock to the audience, which actually made it very, very believable. It actually happened 2 times. So over the first weekend when it happened during Dre and Snoop's set, it was a complete shock and surprise. The second time it happened was the next weekend, and the reaction was completely different. People knew when it was going to happen. It was a sea of cell phones that came out and captured this, and you can see the results. Everybody shared it. Everybody posted it. Definitely check out the bonus content on all of this stuff, as you mentioned, all the video content, because the stills don't do things like this justice. But, to your point, making the technology invisible so it's just an experience is absolutely what we love to do, and that's kind of what drives us. How do you equate that to something like, excuse me, like an activation or a smaller setting? This is an activation we did for the Jordan brand, and this was a very small holographic activation. This was probably about a 50 by 50 foot area in a building downtown in New Orleans during the NBA All-Star game. So what would happen here is people would come in, and you see 4 All-Stars here, which is Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, and Blake Griffin. So obviously they're, Nike wants to sell those shoes. They're custom shoes. So what this was is we set up a training facility. You would come in, you would try on one of their shoes, you would get to dribble the basketball and learn moves, and then depending on what player's shoes you had on, a hologram of that person would appear and teach you some basketball moves. So you really got to learn how these shoes reacted in a game setting. And you can kind of see the results here on social media. One thing we did that was actually very easy for us is we had a hidden high-definition camera. So when you were done training with, let's say, Blake Griffin, we would step you at a predetermined spot, we would light you, and we would put you as a hologram. We would project you as a hologram on stage with all 4 of these characters. So you can kind of see the bottom picture right there with Blake Griffin standing next to a hologram of Blake Griffin. That's actually, both of those people are actually holograms. So Blake stood in front of the camera. We projected him on stage with all the players. At that point, we would take a photo, put it up to Instagram to hashtag TakeFlightNOLA, and that really, really drove a lot of the traffic. I think the results at the end of that were Nike had the massive percentage of social media buzz during the NBA All-Star Game, so it really, really did the job. One thing that we're kind of working on today in the kind of the holographic range is smaller scale holographics. So definitely check out the bonus content on this one as well. But this is a 32-inch custom unit that we've built. You can imagine if you're on a trade show floor, you don't have a 50 by 50, foot space to activate a hologram and, get attention. So this is something that fits, really nicely into small spaces. Definitely place these around events, and it's great for product marketing. On this sample right here, you see there's an iPad there that's actually sitting in the unit itself. And then there's holographic content that we've created that kind of circles around that. So it's amazing to see, for as small as this is, it's amazing how this stops foot traffic and people stop, stare at it, take out their phones, tweet about it. It really, really drives traffic. So you mentioned, at the very beginning, like you said, hiding the technology. This kind of really hides how it happens, and you just walk by and see holographic graphics floating around this iPad.
Yeah, and like I said, I've been a sci-fi fan for my entire life, and to see holograms actually come to life has been kind of a dream come true for me. It's really amazing. And the other trend that we're seeing a lot of is these huge IMAX-style screens at events. This is a screenshot from our summer conference I mentioned, Steven Connects. We had a challenge. We had 2,500 people in this event, and we were in the largest room of the MGM Grand in Vegas, and we really wanted something that would impress our audience. And since our audience is event planners, they're pretty hard to impress. So we really wanted to level up our traditional PowerPoint game, and Kurt, your team really delivered for us. How did you do it?
You mentioned with a couple thousand people in a room, and you want to really grab their attention, and something like a 250-foot visual canvas that kind of wraps a little bit around the audience is definitely going to make them sit up and take notice. This was 18 high-definition projection streams that were all blended together to create a seamless canvas. And, when you do something like this, I can't stress enough that you have enough time to create some really good content for it and some visually impactful content for it. Not just for the show content, like, your big open, your speaker intros, videos and things like that, but you really want your presenters to utilize this as well, because one thing they can, if a presenter, and you can see in the bottom left shot there, if a presenter's on stage, they can actually be dwarfed by a canvas like this if they don't utilize it correctly and just put up a single 16 by 9 PowerPoint. You really want them doing widescreen presentations and really pulling that audience into their presentation. But once presenters grasp this and actually use something like this once, they really, really love it. But once again, doing something like this, people talk a lot about 4K and high resolution. This pixel space for this was, probably about 18,000 pixels wide. So, 4K is pretty easy for us when it comes to something like this. It just takes time to really create for it. You take that to another level, and excuse me, everybody wants to raise the game on the experience they create for their audience. This is a show we do with Ray Ramsey and Associates for La Quinta Hotels. We've done this project with them 4 years, and this year they really wanted to take their audience across the United States on a journey and visit some key hotels. They have a lot of things they're doing, some new prototype hotels that they wanted to show off, and they came to us with the challenge of how do we take this audience on a journey across the U.S. and really make it feel like they're traveling and they're seeing different parts of the country. So if you look in the bottom, this is actually a full 360-degree, 580-foot by 20-foot projection surface. So we can create and put you in any environment you want. This is a couple thousand people. So we took them across the U.S. on a journey. You can see the bottom right there. We kind of, all in 3D, we built an airplane cockpit for one of the pieces, and we went around the country and we had a drone, and we developed a custom 360-degree camera with multiple 4K cameras, and we flew that drone up. So we mapped that pixel per pixel around this canvas, so it really felt like you were in that environment. It was a huge hit, and a lot of people focus on the visuals, but I can't stress enough how important audio is. If you've ever been sitting in an audience and you see incredible visuals, but the audio stinks, that experience just went down the tube. So something like this, we created very directional 8.1 audio. So when visuals are moving around the room to the left and the right and behind you, you heard those, you heard that sound go by, and it really enhanced the experience.
Yeah, these giant screens are really, really awesome, and I'm starting to read more and more about projection mapping. So if I understand this correct, this is where you can take an image or an animation and throw it up not only on the giant screens that we just went through, but also on basically anything, venue walls, exterior walls, different set pieces. Is that a right way to explain it, Kurt?
Yeah, that's correct, and definitely with these, once again, I can't reiterate enough, watch the videos, the bonus content, because that's really where you can kind of see all the different angles and how we cover surfaces like this with projection. You'll hear this called projection mapping. You'll hear it called image mapping. There's a few different terms that people use for this, but basically what we're doing is we're taking objects and surfaces, and in this case you're seeing an event for SEMA. It's a very small event. It's about 300 people in a room. And the challenge was, how do we take them on a bit of a journey and tell a story? So we wanted to bring the element of surprise into this. There were no screens in the room, and what you're looking at is simply the back wall of the ballroom. Those 3 columns in there were actual physical columns, and the stage was in front of that. So when people entered this room, there was no screen there. There was just a stage. So there's probably a little bit of confusion on how presentations were going to happen, but when they sat down and that entire back wall came to life, it really kicked off the conference nicely. You take that to the next level, and this is a show we do for Tableau. This is for 6,000 people last year in Seattle. So what we did here is we created a 300-foot wide kind of a geometrical projectionable set. So when you walked in, if you see in the bottom left there are very key ultra-wide screens on the left and the right, but then in the middle and in the far left to right, we created these geometric cubes, and that entire surface was digitally mapped with 38 streams of projection. So a little bit of a misdirect here was when you walk in, the only thing that's active are these screens, these wide screens, but then when the open plays and lights go out, every single surface comes to life, and you can really get creative with what content goes where and be really deliberate about. You can see in the right image there, there's a very deliberate 16 by 9 box for videos as well. So after an open played and the CEO of the company comes out and he actually takes control of this 300-foot canvas, basically the size of a football field, for his hour-long presentation, he didn't come out and do a standard PowerPoint. We drove this entire canvas 300 feet for an hour with animations, obviously his messaging, everything he wanted to get across, and it just happened seamlessly behind him, and that was an incredible experience for the audience. You take that once again to the next level. Like I said, projection mapping is really, really good for the element of surprise. This event was on the USS Midway aircraft carrier in San Diego. They have a lot of events on the deck of that aircraft carrier. For the first hour of this event, nobody really knew that there was any projection involved. All the projectors were hidden. We didn't bring that island of the aircraft carrier to life until a very key moment in the performance when that entire thing came to life for 5 minutes with visuals and graphics. And something like that is those moments are really, really good because audiences, they always take out their phones, they capture those, they share them. The event lives on beyond just what we did at the live event. A lot of people think projection mapping and image mapping is something you need a massive surface for, like the side of a hotel or a building, or even like the last example, an aircraft carrier. It can be very, very effective in a small space. And this one, once again, I can't reiterate enough, watch the video content because you'll see how cool this looks when you're standing up next to it. This was Epson's Infocom booth last year, actually this year. This is an image mapping that we did with Epson's projectors themselves. So if you look at the image on the right there, all the way in the back, you see where the branding there is Epson. That's a mapped surface, and then about 8 to 10 feet in front of it is a scale model of Epson's digital city. We brought that to life with digitally mapped projection. If all this projection was off, you would just see all gray on all of this. And then about 5 feet in front of those are 2 Epson robots. And those are 6-axis robots that are holding projection surfaces. They're not display screens. They're just gray projection surfaces. So what we did is we programmed those robots to move simultaneously to kind of do a bit of a choreographed dance, and then we tracked them with infrared motion tracking, and then we projected Epson's branding and some very cool graphics on those surfaces. So when you're walking by this booth and you see robots, you're going to kind of be a little bit interested already. So when those robots are also holding a surface that's mapped, a digitally surface, that's moving, and we're mapping that with projection, this literally caused a bottleneck of people that were just stopping and staring and taking out phones, which is, that's what you want in a, I can't imagine at Infocom. You can imagine how many booths are actually on that trade show floor. But this was definitely, and I think it was the winner for Raised Best booth. But once again, you don't have to have a massive surface for projection mapping to be very, very effective.
Yeah, this is incredible stuff, Kurt. And to see the videos, I watched the Epson video just this morning. It's incredible. You have to take the post-event survey, campaigns.cvent.com/2016 trends, and that'll get you all the links to these great videos. And, more and more, Kurt, we're seeing these amazing immersive experiences made possible by advancements in the camera, the capture, and the projection technology. And earlier you mentioned 4K, UHD. I'm hearing these terms get tossed around more and more. Can you educate the people on the call today a little about what the difference is and what they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, the big buzzword is 4K and Ultra HD, and if you think about that in your home, and you put a standard high def TV next to a 4K TV, you're going to see a pretty good difference. And when you equate that to a live event or a booth or something like that, you really got to think of, do you really need 4K, and do you really want to pay that extra cost to get 4K? And a couple of parameters around that are how close is your audience going to be to your visuals? Meaning, if you look at that Epson booth, people can walk up and they're literally 5 feet away. So you may want that extra resolution. And 4K is actually in the single frame is 4 times the resolution of standard high definition. So it really, really does make a difference in that type of setting. But if you're, at a keynote for 3,000 people, and then you have a stage, and then your screen is, to your closest maybe front row seat, 30, 40 feet away, you may not notice the difference between 4K and HD. Because that distance is causing, your perception, you don't see the pixels at that point. A lot of our clients are tech clients where they're kind of demoing, whether it's a phone, whether it's a tablet or something like that. And, if you pick up your phone and look at it and you look at the text, it's pretty fine. And if you want to connect the phone and then put it up to a 20-foot by, 100-foot screen, and people are very close to it, you may want to use 4K because that's really going to give you the resolution you want. If you use high definition, even though there's nothing wrong with the phone, and people see, a 20-foot tall representation of your small phone, and they see that the text maybe isn't that sharp or the images aren't that sharp, it has nothing to do with the phone. It's all about the projection and how it's being replicated. But they may equate that subconsciously to that phone really doesn't look that good. So the other thing is how is this being captured? How is your event or how is your presentation being captured? Is it going to be live streamed? Is it going to be edited so people can see it later? If you have a person standing on the stage and there's a presentation screen, 5-10 feet from them, and that camera gets really nice tight shots, you may want that screen to be a 4K screen just so when people look at that on the live stream or after the fact, that resolution really is helping sell those visuals behind your presenter. So, just a few things to think about. This 4K is definitely a cost factor across the board. You can't just put a 4K projector up and say, hey, now we're doing 4K. There's a lot of back end that has to go with that, right down to, like I said, the content creation as well. So if you're using high definition 4K, you really want that content to sing as well.
Yeah, I think the takeaway here is, the technology, 4K or UHD, it's becoming more available. It's something that we definitely can incorporate in our events, but we just need to do it in a way that makes sense. Another technology that's beginning to get adoption, just like these high-def cameras, is smart, real-time, personalized content. I saw a demo, and I forget where I saw this, but it showed a vendor at a trade show, and they had a video monitor that as different types of attendees walked by their booth, you could identify who they were. Say they had a IT director persona and they had a marketing manager persona, and based on that persona, it could show a tailored message. And the mechanics behind this are really interesting. Today, you can accomplish that through some RFID chips or sometimes Bluetooth linked to the user's device, but there's also some really interesting advances in like facial recognition that can make this a reality. And I think we're a long ways off from the type of experiences you may have seen in the movie Minority Report, but even today, leading companies like Disney are accomplishing this real-time personalization with innovative uses of wearables. This is a larger consumer trend that includes things like the Apple Watch, the now defunct Google Glass project, or at Disney, what they're calling the Disney Band. So in the Disney amusement park, this is like their Smart Pass system on steroids. It's not only your ticket to ride any of the attractions, but it's also how you pay for merchandise, for concessions, and it allows Disney to hyper-personalize the entire park experience to delight their guests. For example, they have a Beauty and the Beast themed restaurant, and it's called Be Our Guest. When you walk up to the front door, the wearable technology alerts the hostess so she can greet you by name, and she tells you to pick any table you like. And because you've already told them what you want to eat when you made that reservation, you don't need to skim through a menu, you don't need to order from a waiter. Instead, the wearable technology alerts the wait staff precisely where in the restaurant you chose to sit, and they bring the food right to your table. Now that's an unforgettable, a delightful experience, and I think it's going to take some time for this level of execution and implementation to trickle down to our conferences and to our meetings, but this sort of thing is no longer a science fiction. And speaking of wearable technologies and unforgettable experiences, my girlfriend recently went to the Taylor Swift concert this year, and she couldn't stop talking about these light-up wristbands that really energize the crowd. Kurt, what's this all about here?
This is a technology. This is actually Pixmob right here, the example for Taylor Swift. We're working with them on a couple projects right now. This actually effectively turns every audience member into a pixel. So you can run content across this audience. It's really, really effective right now for lighting effects. Like you can imagine if Taylor, everything goes dark and Taylor does something on stage and then, an energy wave of light spreads out across the audience, that really, really gets people involved, gets them excited. There's a few issues with the technology that we're getting really close to solving, meaning you can imagine there's 50,000 people in an audience and you want to put a very high-resolution graphic across them, and you really need to know where every single person is in that audience. So tracking where that single pixel is, where their seat's going to be, but is that person in their seat? And if they're not in their seat, are they 100 feet away from their seat? So really, really having fine-tuned mapping and tracking of where everybody is will really raise this to the next level. You can already run visuals across this, but once we know and can track where every single person is, that's going to be the next level.
This is like the next generation of when we went to college football games and we held up pieces of cardboard to spell out a message for the away team, right?
Pretty much.
It's a crazy world we're living in, Kurt. Okay, so we've got lots of exciting things on the display production horizon that can really help wow the audience, but while a Tupac hologram or a gigantic display can generate buzz and be really memorable, what really drives value for our attendees and keeps them coming back is when they're able to make more meaningful connections with other people at the event. And that can mean other attendees, or it can mean key vendors, or even employees of your organization. In fact, the number of new professional connections somebody makes at your event is a key driver of whether or not they'll plan to attend in future years. So as the people on the call, as you're planning your 2016 events, there's some really exciting but still early technology solutions that can help drive better face-to-face interactions. Again, we see wearables playing a big part here, whether that's the adoption of the Apple Watch or whether it's just increased use of camera phones and GPS. A big trend that we're seeing is the adoption of augmented reality is really starting to take hold in some of the larger shows. So think about a giant trade show like a consumer electronics show or Dreamforce. With so many vendors, it can be really difficult to find that needle in the haystack of the vendor you really want to meet with or the person who's really going to be relevant. But if you could look through your camera phone or through some sort of video and could see the list of vendors down this aisle, some sort of scoring on their relevance, that can help you really navigate through all the noise and find the vendors that are most important to you. Or say you know the list of attendees and you know that you really want to meet with Mary from IMAX, but you don't know what she looks like. Augmented reality can help you make that connection more easily. And just by identifying and highlighting who it is that's walking around. And, we don't need a fancy Google Glass or to look at the world through our smartphone cameras to make these sort of VIP alerts possible. Just by using your phone and Bluetooth, mobile event apps today can make smart alerts possible, like the one you see on the screenshot here. You tell the app who you want to meet with, and you can get alerts when they, or at least their devices, are nearby. So person-to-person alerts are maybe a few development cycles away, but one way planners are jumping on localized alerts is with beacons, and this is a really hot space in the mobile and the personalization. So these small, they're low-energy Bluetooth hotspots. They stick to the walls of your venue, or they hide out in your vendor booths, and they can be programmed to send specific alerts when attendees walk by. So there's some great use cases for this. You can pull up session info when someone enters a breakout room, or you can put it on the door frame through your general session. Halfway through your general session, as people are exiting your general session room, that beacon will fire, and it will prompt them to fill out a post-event survey or a post-session survey. It's also a great way for exhibitors to catch walk-by traffic. This is a great thing to incorporate in some of your vendor booths. The point here is that our smartphones are really, really magical devices with tons of capabilities that we haven't even yet started to leverage to add to our events. They call them smartphones, you realize, because they're actually smarter than you or I. And for example, what if your phone knew about your interests and it could tell you the best sessions that you should attend, rather than trying to flip through a conference brochure or try to figure out, should I be in breakout A or breakout B? Your phone could suggest the best sessions for you. And if we can do session recommendations, connection recommendations are just around the corner. So this is a great way to help foster better attendee networking. It's always tough for me when I'm at a cocktail hour and I'm in the corner and I'm not talking to anybody and I don't really know who I should go and who I should go out and talk to. But in before you know it, your phone is going to start buzzing and say, hey, there's this guy, Barney Richards. He's also not talking to anybody, and you two both share an interest in event technology. So within a year or maybe a year or so from now, I hope that happens to some of the people on this call, and you can tell about how you heard it here first on the Meetings Focus webinar. So after this hypothetical meeting with Barney, maybe you want to exchange contact info, but who remembers to carry business cards anymore? I know I rarely do. So again, our phones make it really easy to make new connections, to share information, and help that connection develop after the event. Another really important way that an event mobile app can enable this is with attendee-to-attendee messaging, and this is even available today. I didn't really buy into this. I thought, it's just like texting, but the point of going to conferences and events is to meet new people. And sometimes you don't have their contact info yet, or maybe you used to have their contact info. At our summer conference, I was speaking to two planners and found out that they had been like childhood friends and hadn't talked to each other for like 20 years. But the one saw the other on the plane to our event, opened up the mobile app, found her in the mobile app attendee list, and they started messaging through our mobile app. And then, boom, then they're hanging out the whole conference. They're re-sparking that friendship. It was just a really, very poignant demonstration of the power of using mobile event apps and facilitating attendee connections. So it's kind of a futuristic moment for me. So I was really excited to see that, and really excited to see all the other things that are going to come out with our mobile technology.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of what we do in live events is we create those shareable moments, and a lot of people want wow moments is what they call them, and you really got to time those in the span of your story and your event, because you don't really want somebody with their phone up in front of their face the entire event, because then they're really going to miss it. But you want to plan out those moments that are definite wow moments and shareable moments. This is a good example right here. This is from a live concert we did where Wu-Tang Clan came out, and we brought out Eazy-E as a hologram. He'd been deceased for many, many years, obviously, and in the middle of their set, once again, under cover of darkness, we landed this holographic rig, and then Eazy-E appeared on stage and performed 3 songs. You can kind of see the result. This is the shot from the audience, and everybody just see a cell phone. So creating those moments is key, but, getting people to share them, I think, is also a big plus.
Yeah, that's right, Kurt. Event design and planning for those tweetable moments is huge, but the second half of the equation is getting people to actually, write and post to their social networks, and hopefully they remember to use your carefully selected event hashtag. So one way you can make this easier on your audience is by putting a button in your event app, Tweet Now, and it helps you auto-populate the hashtag. People can link up all their accounts, and not only can they send out content, but great content from your event can bubble up in their event feed. And you can take this to the next level by aggregating all the great social content from your event that's happening on that hashtag and project a live updating display of the social conversations where everybody can see it. Not only does this delight people who are already tweeting, you'll see people, walk by, see the social wall up on the screen and just stop and stare and tap their friends, smile, hey, look, that's my photo. But it also shows people who are not yet participating in the conversation that there's a real interaction taking place in the social universe and they're missing out. We call this FOMO, the fear of missing out, and you can leverage this for really powerful results and ultimately increased attendee engagement. Best of all, a tool like SocialWall has really smart auto moderation, so you can set it, forget it, and take care of the latest fire drill while your SocialWall runs and runs updates in real time. And speaking of real-time, Kurt, what can you tell us about real-time event management?
Something we do when we do large events, maybe let's just say there's 50, 100, 200 breakout sessions, and, we really need to know that every single one of those is running smoothly so the attendees aren't sitting there and a screen goes down and, that breakout comes to a halt. So we've developed a call-to-action system for our techs that, let's just say there's 30 breakouts and we have 10 techs. Obviously, those techs can't be in every single room at once, making sure everything's running great. So every one of those rooms will have a tablet with a call-to-action system that we developed. And if anything's going wrong, whether it's a microphone, a projector, anything, sound, they can instantly call that tech to that room who's on standby to kind of see what's going on and fix that. So there's no downtime whatsoever.
Yeah, and speakers and panel moderators, they're not the only ones who are going to run into issues. Your attendees are also going to have questions, they'll have concerns that just need to be addressed. And the problem is there's hundreds of them, and sometimes there's just one of you. So we need to start thinking about creative technology solutions to help overcome this communication challenge. I'd like to see more adoption of the in-app event concierge concept. This is where attendees can post and answer questions or get updates from the planning team, and this just helps solve problems before they become a statistic in your post-event survey. Say the room's too cold, or say that we're out of food. We can react to these things in real time without having to wait around it. I mean, you can't solve a problem until you know about it, and tools like this just help problems kind of bubble up and get to your attention.
Yeah, at large events, there's always going to be problems. It's how you handle those and how fast you handle those. So it's almost as seamless to the audience that they don't even know it exists. Something that you just popped up here is digital signage. As simple as it seems, if you've got 5,000, 10,000 people trying to find their way, obviously on their smartphone and agendas and things like that, but walking to their breakout or their meeting and having real-time updates pushed to these digital signage pieces, they'll be able to adjust their day and plan their day because changes always happen in large events like this.
Yeah, and the second screen equivalent of digital signage is the mobile push notification. As I like to say, every event is different, but the one thing they all have in common is last-minute changes are basically a guarantee. So when lunch moves from ballroom A to ballroom C, instead of whipping out the bullhorn, you can just pull out your phone and send a push notification alert to your attendees. And when you do this, just stand in the hallway and watch the crowd take a U-turn. It's really incredible to watch. It's not only for last-minute changes, but you can also schedule push notifications in advance to piggyback on big moments in your program or just to keep the show moving. At our event, we had a lot of success with notifications like, break will be over in 5 minutes, start heading back into the general session.
Yeah, and I think to your point, it really helps cut frustration on the attendees level, and it really helps their experience become meaningful to them. And like you mentioned, if something changes, which it always does, but you can push out immediate notifications, your attendees are going to be thankful as opposed to upset that they walked upstairs to level 3 where they're supposed to be on level 1 because something changed.
Okay, so for our 5th and final trend, we expect event producers to not only leverage all the cool tools we've highlighted so far in this hour, but also to start making sense of all these data points and turning them into actionable insights. I'm talking about reporting beyond just simple attendee counts or our ticket sales, but using analytics to really get to know your audience and get to know their needs. An easy way to get started with this is session tracking. Now, if you're an event veteran and you're listening to my voice right now, you're probably yelling at your computer monitor and telling me that session tracking isn't new, and you're right. It's been around as long as we've had paper, pencil, a clipboard, and a volunteer to man the door. But new check-in tools are becoming more widely accessible. They're available through the cloud, and they get linked with your registration and your event management tools. And what that means is you can see real-time information on your event flow. You can see which sessions are popular, you can see which speakers are drawing the biggest crowds, and you can see what topics are getting traction. This info is useful in the aggregate, but it also becomes really interesting when you use it to develop attendee profiles. So, for example, say you have a conference and you have a track on marketing and you have a track on product development. If you know John Smith attended 10 marketing sessions and 2 development sessions, you can probably assume that your future communications with John should focus around marketing solutions. And session tracking is just the beginning here. The more information that you can collect in one place, the more robust a profile you can build. Imagine if you could track not only the sessions that John attended, but his meetings with exhibitors, the one-on-one appointments that he set, and other key points of interest. Then you could generate for John a complete event success report. Make it really easy for each attendee to go to their boss, demonstrate the value they receive from attending your event, and get approval to attend next year. Insights like this are also really helpful on the individual level. An event can sometimes be just 3 days of chaos for even the most seasoned attendees, and it's important to call out and reinforce the key moments. Who did I meet with? What did I learn? Why should I come back next year? This sort of insight is good for attendees. It's also really powerful for your exhibitors. As you know, a strong exhibitor support can be the difference between an event being in the red or an event being in the black. But so far, it's been really challenging to demonstrate to our exhibitors the value of attending our events. At CVent, we exhibit at hundreds of conferences and trade shows and industry events every year, and my boss always wants to know, was it worth it, and should we go back? Before I had analytics to show the impact on our pipeline, all I could really answer was, I hope so, and I guess so. But in 2016, hoping and guessing, it won't be good enough for my boss, and it won't be good enough for your exhibitors' bosses. So instead, provide them with a definitive list of the new contacts they made, and advanced solutions can even hook into your exhibitor's CRM tools like Salesforce.com and track the actual business driven from meetings that started at your event. That's the sort of insight that keeps top exhibitors and their sponsorship dollars coming back to your event year after year after year. So, we've covered a lot of stuff, and we've got a lot of great questions, so hang on the line and we'll be able to get to some of them. But to review the topics that we've covered, we gave you a look through some of the amazing immersive experiences that AV Concepts and some of the really new technologies are able to develop to really wow and impress the audience. And then we've also talked about facilitating better attendee interaction, how some of the little things like a mobile app and other tools can help facilitate better attendee connections to make more meaningful experiences. We looked at social media integration and some of the new ways that we can incorporate this great conversation to really boost our event conversations. We talked about real-time event management and some of the ways technology is enabling us to be more fast to respond. And then finally, we talked about the future of deep insights and using analytics to make our events more successful. Really appreciate everyone taking the time to be on. We are going to answer some questions, but I do want to remind you to get the great bonus content, to get some examples of the videos, to get links to articles that will teach you more about 4K and UHD and all this great stuff we've covered, please take our post-event feedback survey. It's at campaigns.cvent.com/2016trends. It's like 5 questions. It'll take you 2 minutes, and we'd really appreciate hearing how we did. But before we let everybody go, let's get through some questions.
All right. Thanks, Kevin and Kurt, for the presentation. Lots of cool stuff in there with the event tech trends, and I liked how you kind of had the big flashy stuff at first and had those relevant examples of kind of how planners could integrate it into their event. Had a little feedback there. I think we're back on track. But anyways, now we're going to start our Q&A session. You can submit your questions by typing in the Ask a Question box below the speaker photo on the left-hand side of the slide deck and hitting send. And yeah, just start doing that now, and we'll just get into the questions. And I guess I'll just start with, this kind of relates to 4K and the UHD. And we had one question asking, first off, just to explain, are they the same thing? Are there differences? Is there something that's competitive with 4K? I just thought I'd start out with that question.
A lot of people will call it UHD, which is ultra high definition 4K. It actually isn't true 4K. The resolution for UHD is 3840 by 2160, but true 4K is 4096 by 2160. So UHD is a derivative of 4K, and that's kind of what you'll see in all the consumer TVs. The projectors we use for 4K actually project true 4K, but in that sense, you're really only talking about losing a few vertical pixels, so it's really not noticeable. But true 4K is actually a little higher resolution than UHD.
All right, and thanks for clarifying that. And then while we're on the topic of 4K, somebody had asked, do you think 4K will bring us back towards next generation 3D, or has 3D kind of completely died out? Where do you see that going?
I think for us, it's really all about the experience. It starts with the experience, and the higher resolution. We'd always love to use high resolution, specifically in 3D. And there's been experience that I've seen that we've created in a dome, and it's all 4K, and it's 3D, and it's pretty spectacular. So I think 3D, at least me, I'm 50-50 on it. It can be incredible. Or it can just fall flat, and it really depends on the experience you want to create, and the venue and area you had to create that experience in. 3D is really somewhat dependent on viewing angles and things like that. So a lot of these large curved screens may not work. So there's a lot of things that go into it. But I don't think 3D is dead. But I'm just on that side of the fence.
All right. And while we're on the topic of the immersive experiences, somebody had asked what parameters are needed to produce a hologram and what would be kind of an estimated cost. And I'm guessing people would be curious on that kind of smaller scale you had mentioned what something like that would cost.
And that always comes down to the content you put in it and the content we create for it. The unit itself is relatively inexpensive, but specifically, and these are actually perceived holograms, what we're creating. A true hologram really is not possible at the moment. This is a perceived 3D hologram with all of these examples. But, it comes down to the content. And if, let's just say the Tupac example, if that content didn't look true and real and lifelike, it would have been a completely different experience and completely different result. And the same thing holds true for the smaller units. So it's hard to answer the price question, but the cost factors are definitely the size of perceived hologram you want to create, and then the content is actually a big driver in that cost factor.
All right. Yeah, and then I know there was a couple other cost questions, which I'm guessing I'll ask you this one, but then I think probably for the rest of the cost ones, it's probably really is dependent on the content. But somebody had asked what the general cost for the wide projection screen technology. So I'm guessing they're talking about the large scale projection screen technology. And I'll just let you answer that quick. But
and that's across the board as well. It has to do with equipment wise anyway. If you've done an event, let's just say take the C-event screen that we did was 250 feet. So that was, if I remember, 18 individual high-definition streams blended together. So if you've done an event with maybe one or two of those projectors that are just 16:9 screens, and the cost of that, you can kind of start to build out, well, it's not necessarily 18 times as expensive because, economies of scale play a factor, but you've got a much larger screen, so you're talking about scenic, and then more equipment and more gear to actually power that and run it. And then once again, content is a major driving factor in that, because creating for standard definition, high definition, 4K is one thing, but creating for a canvas that's one of our last canvases was 38,000 pixels wide. There's just a massive effort that needs to go into doing that correctly. So those are your kind of general driving factors.
Yeah, and just doing a couple of these events, tech webinars, I know beacons are always kind of brought up, and there's always people who I think I hear brought up a lot but don't know exactly how to get started with it. And somebody had asked, how do you actually acquire the beacons, and is it difficult to get set up at all for your event?
Yeah, beacons are really awesome, something that we leveraged at our Cvent Connect conference. So as people on the call probably know, Cvent has its own mobile app division, Crowd Compass, and we actually work with one of our partners, Estimote, to set up the beacons, to get everything working and get it all configured within your app. But that's something that our support team and our implementation team really take off the planner's hands. So if you're using a Crowd Compass mobile app and you want to incorporate beacons, we've got a couple really easy steps to configure those alerts to help you plan where those are going to make the most impact. And we can even help you out with ordering and making sure those beacons show up at your event. So if anybody would want more information on mobile apps or their options, go ahead, put that right in the Q&A, and I'll make sure somebody follows up with you after this webinar today.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. And now somebody had a question. It looks like it was related to attendee interactions, and they were kind of talking about the concerns with it looks like they asked, how do you moderate these interactions? And I think that kind of has to do with the experiences people are having. I mean, you're talking about creating that buzzworthy experience. And maybe you'll interpret this question differently, but I guess just how would you moderate interactions as they're happening?
Yeah, I think whenever you're doing attendee-generated content, there's always that worry that something inappropriate is going to go up on your screen in front of 1,000 attendees. And it's definitely something worth thinking about. And you should think about, who is our audience? Like, do they know how to use social media? Are they going to accidentally post a pic that was meant for, maybe not meant for the entire world? But there's two ways to do it. Actually, there's three ways to do it. The first is just to trust your people and have an unfiltered conversation. And for some audiences, that works. The second option is to have, you can have someone moderating each post as it comes in, and a post need to be approved before they show up on your social wall. This can be a great job for an intern or a volunteer, just someone who can be not even located at your event. They can be back in the office, load up the admin interface for your social wall, and be approving and denying posts as they come in. The third way, if you don't have a staff member, is we have what we call auto moderation or smart filters. This is an algorithm that looks for certain keywords and other things that you can apply. Say you want to make sure that a competitor's name doesn't show up in your social wall. So you can set the parameters, and then that system just runs itself in the background. So there's a couple different options. We're definitely sensitive to the moderation issue. And it just is a matter of the composition of your audience and your resources if you're able to do post-by-post approval or not.
All right. And along the same line of the attendee interaction, somebody had asked, are there any readily available apps that are recommended for users maybe who are new to real-time interaction at their events, and maybe they don't already have platforms for registration, event info, and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. What I find really interesting about event technology is that the needs are really specific to the individual planner. The tools that Cvent develops, our thinking is they each work great on their own, but they work even better when they're used together. So, like I mentioned, our mobile division, Crowd Compass, that's a great app for, the real-time interaction and audience engagement, and it doesn't require to be using a broader platform. But what the broader platform enables is some of these deeper insights, these business analytics, and honestly, it just makes the job easier on the person who has to run the show, because you don't have to be juggling data between 7 or 8 different systems. It's all in one cohesive system. So that's kind of our vision for what event technology should look like. But we recognize that it's important that sometimes you just need an app, and if that's what you need, you should be able to get it, and we can definitely help out in that area. Whoever asked that question, I don't have your first, last name, but if you'd love to learn a little bit more about what we can offer, like I said, go ahead and put that in the Q&A, and I'll make sure someone follows up with you today.
All right. And here was kind of an interesting one. Somebody had asked with the holograms, can they be reused, or is there a limit to holograms? And I'm guessing they're asking, like, just if they can, I guess how many times they can be used. I don't know if they're talking about during different sessions or things like that. And I guess I'll let you guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that for the smaller unit, absolutely. If you think about, like you mentioned, in sessions or even a keynote, let's just say there's a keynote for an event that on day 1 there's a keynote, day 2, and then day 3, all individual keynotes, and you want a holographic presenter or maybe the CEO of the company up there each day. We can absolutely rig it to be reused. Once that comes down from a live event, that system and that surface is destroyed. So the content obviously is reusable at any time, but a large-scale holographic projection, once it's up and down in a event or live environment setting, you use it once and it's done. In a permanent example, maybe like a museum, it can last a couple of years until we have to replace that system.
All right. And looks like maybe we have time for just another quick question, then we'll probably have to wrap things up. Somebody had asked with the projection mapping and the wraparound screens, how much time for that kind of technology is there needed for the setup?
And then, once again, that all depends on scale and complexity. If you reference that Tableau setup with the geometrical projectionable set, that was 300 feet wide, 38 streams, that took 4 to 5 days to set up and map and get the content ready to go. Something like the USS Midway, we load that in overnight because we pre-mapped it, and it's ready to go. So it really depends on the scale and size of what we're creating and what we're designing, how many streams, all the tech that has to go behind that. Something like the Epson booth, that small setup went in a matter of 2 days.
All right. And it looks like there's a bunch more questions that filtered in at the end. A lot of people leaving their contact information, which I'm sure you guys like to see. So you guys will be provided that information, and some of our people will get follow-up on that. But now I think it's about time to wrap things up. So thanks to Kevin and Kurt once again for all the great information and answering those questions as well.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We always love the Meetings Focus audience. Final plug to take the survey.
Yep.
And definitely, once again, check out those videos for sure.
Got to check the videos.
Definitely, yeah. I think I'll even check those out. They sound like they'd be pretty cool. And as Kevin mentioned, following the webinar, you will be redirected to the survey provided by CVent. Upon completion of that survey, you will be redirected to today's Webinar Club page. And that Webinar Club page, each one shows you, I guess it's a place where you can download today's presentation, view the webinar on demand, and you can get that CMP credit instructions on there, which I know a lot of people ask about, in addition to other articles and information. Today's Webinar Club page is meetingsfocus.com/webinarclub-event-marketing. If you are not automatically redirected, you may also visit our website. Hover over the Webinars tab in the site navigation and click on Webinar Club. Thanks again to today's presenters, Kevin Yanuszewski and Kurt Aponovich, and to CVent for sponsoring the webinar. And thanks to all of you for joining us for this special webinar event. Have a great day, and we hope to see you again soon.